Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Josh. I said it right this time. And
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 Victor.
Victor. And today we're going to talk about another movie. And I just saw this movie for the first time the other day. And it's quite good, but we'll get to that later. The movie is The King's Speech. Um, and just a
He
quick,
talks.
do what?
He talks.
He talks.
He's a
Um,
talking king.
yes. Um, I like the title, by the way. I like the King's Speech because ultimately the movie is about a speech, but then also it's about his speech because he has a speech impediment. The whole time
Mm.
watching the movie, I was like, "Aha! I see what you did there." Um,
I
anyway,
like
to tell you a little bit about the movie, and this is from our show notes. I don't know where you stole these from, but I'm going to read them as is. uh,
Wikipedia. Don't tell
the
nobody.
The King's Speech is a 2010 British historical drama film directed by Tom Hooper and written by David Seidler. Colin Firth plays King George the sixth. Is that right? Yeah, sixth.
That's
Uh,
yes. Yes.
who, to cope with a stammer, sees Lionel Logue, an Australian speech therapist played by Geoffrey Rush. The men become friends as they work together, and after his brother abdicates the throne, the new king relies on Logue to help him make his first wartime radio broadcast on Britain's declaration of war on Germany in 1939. So fantastic film. By the way, just for people that are like into movies, and we were just talking about Les Mis a second ago. Tom
Hmm.
Hooper is actually the guy directing the new Les Mis movie.
Oh, good.
So the same guy that directed this movie. Um,
See, I wouldn't know, nor do I care about those kinds of facts. But thank you.
right, and then Jeffrey Rush, if you've seen any of the Pirates movies, is Captain Barbossa. So
Dang it! That's what it is. I knew him from somewhere. See, I'm
yes,
terrible.
he is
I'm
Captain
the worst.
Barbossa. So anyway, before I ramble too long about actors, Victor, what is your pro for this movie?
Just to remind everybody, we do pros, cons, and what to watch for in
Yeah.
our video reviews of movies. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But my pro is Jeffrey Rush, and he plays Lionel Logue, Dr. Logue, the guy who helps the king. And I have to tell you, the thing with historical dramas is that you don't know these people. Most of the time, these folks are dead, long gone, and he played this character, hopefully accurately, but it was just spot on. There was a genuineness to his character, and I think the thing that stood out to me was he was an Australian who came to the UK, and he was working. The way he got into this speech help thing was that he was working with people from the First World War,
Mhm.
Australians in the First World War, who were dealing with what was called then shell shock, but is now called PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, Now we have a more sophisticated name for it. Uh, Same thing. And so he was saying that they were having difficulty talking. They would just get trapped up. And so what's cool is that he discovered that what they needed was someone to listen to them and someone to be their friend. And the only way you can do that is if you were equals. And in the first one of the first meetings is that he constantly calls the king by his nickname,
Mhm.
Birdie. And he says, "Don't call me that. Nobody calls me that except my family." And he says, "Well, in here, we're going to be equals." He
Mhm.
says, "I don't care if you're the king," essentially. And it was one of those things where you see this awesome relationship. At first, you're like, "This isn't going to work. This is going to blow up." But obviously,
Right.
you know, watch 2.5 hour long movie and you know it's going to work. But just to see, because you're wondering, how is this going to happen? How is
Mhm.
he going to let him help him? And that's the part of the movie that I really love when you see Logue fighting for the relationship and really wanting to help the king um, find his voice is a great, great part of the movie. One of my favorite parts of the movie and the reason I like it so much.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, I really liked that. Um, I liked him a lot. And that kind of my pro um, is towards the end of the movie.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Right, as if yeah, it's towards the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. Um, they have this moment right when the king is going to be coronated, and they're there for that. And they've just had this really cool scene. Kind of was the flip of the in here we're equals because the king had said, I want Lionel to be in this box right here, and the guy, the priest, was like, well, that's the box reserved for your family. He said, and that's exactly where he needs to be. So they had this really cool, like, touching scene. And then there's like a break, and then when we come back to that same place, Lionel is hit with this drama that's being caused by, I'm assuming, Scotland Yard and the people who kind of vet people as they come in. Um, but basically, we find out, and the king found out, that Lionel's not a doctor. Um, which the king is quick to point out that Lionel never called himself a doctor. In fact, when the king called him doctor, he told him that wasn't necessary. Um, he told him just to call him Lionel. So he never really represented himself as a doctor. He represented himself as a speech therapist. It was just assumed he was a doctor. But that moment was kind of a cool scene, because anytime you have to like look at a character and go, okay, well, maybe your qualifications don't say this, but the fact of the matter is you've done this. Like, it was this moment where I was almost like angry at the king, because I'm like, I don't know why you're so mad. Like, you could talk. It was working fine. Why does it matter if this guy has a piece of paper?
Right.
And so it was a good like kind of heart-wrenching scene, but
It's the moving past. It's the moving past that is realizing that what he was getting. That scene really is the heart of what happens, because from that moment on, the king realizes who this man really is. He really is a genuine person.
See, I agree with that. I think that is what that scene was designed to do. But then this kind of goes into my con, because it just kind of, they go hand in hand, because I'm weird like that. But it was that part of the movie was that. It was this moment of realization where we move past the titles and on to what actually happened, and that is what it was supposed to do. The problem is we had this like separation, anger, I'm done kind of storm out scenario had happened twice in the movie already. We see it in the very beginning, which is fine. I understand it there because he doesn't know what's going on. But we had also seen it in like the middle of the movie when Lionel was telling the king, well, he wasn't the king at the time, he was just the Duke of York, and he's saying, you could be king, talking about the fact that his brother was probably going to be, have to step down from the throne. And he says, you could be king, and Bertie is like, well, that's treason. And basically was like, we're done, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And he like, as was his custom, it seemed in that movie, like anytime he got mad at Lionel, he would smoke a cigarette because he wanted Lionel to know. That was like his way of saying, Lionel, I'm not listening to anything you want, because that was one of the first things that happened between the two of them. Which kudos to them for adding that in, because I liked it. I thought it was a cool little thing. But because I'd seen this happen twice, I was almost like, when it happened the third time, the time that it really matters, I was like, like it, because I don't know, just to me it felt like they used it too many times.
Well, I think, and again, I think that just reveals kind of our American non-monarchy bias, because if you really kind of just try to put yourself in the context of what's going on, this is back when the monarchy is still in control. I mean, the king or queen is still the emperor of India, for goodness sake. India is still a colony at this point in the 1930s, and so it's almost, I didn't feel that tension as much as you did, but because I recognized that this truly was, it wasn't just a commoner from England. He was a dang Australian. He wasn't even a UKer, and here he is interjecting himself into the life of the future king. And so it's like you needed that middle transition. Like, if it wouldn't have happened, it happened 3 times. The first time, King blows him off completely and says, you don't know what the crap you're doing. Second time is when you really see that the king is buying in, and Lionel is trying to get him to see who he could be, but he crosses the line because he jumps the gun.
Right.
He thought he was closer than he needed to be, and then that's when he storms off. And then all of a sudden, the king, what's his name? Goodness gracious, King George? Yeah,
Hmm.
King George's brother abdicates the throne. He becomes king, and he recognizes, I need to go see him. And that's the scene also where he goes to his house,
Yeah, which was,
too. Remember
by
that?
the way, was a fantastic scene.
Great scene.
Uh,
Great scene.
Mostly him hiding from his wife when she comes home.
She doesn't know about us.
And he's like, "You're being a coward. We need to go out there."
And I think my favorite part of that scene was when the wife asks the queen if they're staying for dinner,
Yeah.
and she's like, "That would be lovely, but we'll have to do it some other time." And so polite.
Right.
Anyways, going back to the other thing, um, crazy rabbit trail right there. It's one of those things that I don't mind
Hmm.
the plot falling apart because I think it really helps form the relationship so that by the end of that movie, you really get a sense that they have been able to kind of get over
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah, I see that. And like I said, I really think I did like it there, and I liked it the other times too. My biggest thing for me, it kind of like maybe detracted from like the oomph factor of that scene.
Yeah,
I feel like
it let the pressure off too much a little bit in my mind too.
that's kind of what I felt like, because in a way I knew. Let me put it this way. With a movie like this, I expected this exchange to happen, and I expected it to happen once. That's what I expected. So the fact that it happened 3 times, really two it only matter. The first one, it kind of is a different one. It's classified different in my book. But yeah, I think maybe it was like with a movie like this, I feel like you want to build up the stress level, and I felt
Hmm.
like what putting the one in the middle did, even though I understand your points about it, and it did need to put that like he wasn't at that level of friendship yet.
Hmm.
But I felt like it like took a little. I feel like they turned a valve and let a little bit of the pressure out, and
Hmm.
then so by the time it happened at the end, I'm like, no, we're gonna be okay. Like we've already had our big fallout, which maybe is what they wanted,
Right.
because it turns around like that quick, really.
Hmm.
There's only a few moments where he's like in like really upset about it. Um, so which actually you kind of you put the quotes from the scene where it does turn her back around. It's in that same scene actually.
Yeah.
Did you want to
That's
talk
the
about?
crazy thing. Yeah, I do. But that's the crazy thing is that scene is jam packed, full of like important points. Because in the scene we're talking about is the scene in the uh, Canterbury? No,
No,
Arch
Westminster Abbey.
Westminster Abbey. Why am I saying Canterbury? Oh my gosh, I'm
Because
thinking
of
about rabbits
Canterbury
right now.
Tales.
I guess I'm thinking about rabbits. Um, so the scene is that they're going through. Nobody's in the cathedral. And Logue and King George are going through the entire process of what's going to happen during the coronation. And all of a sudden, the king turns around and starts looking for Dr. Logue, and he's sitting in the chair of St. Edward, which is the chair that kings and queens have sat in for like forever. And he says, "Get out of that chair." He says, "Why?" Because that's a chair for kings. And he says, so many people have sat there buttholes, try to keep it clean here, on that seat. And he says, "Listen to me. Listen to me." And Logue says, "Listen to you by what right? By divine right, if you must. I am your king." And then Logue just goes back at him and says, "No, you're not. You told me so. You didn't want it. Why should I waste my time listening for you?" And he says, "Because I have a right to be heard." And he screams, "I have a voice." And then Logue, with like what I would consider to be just a brotherly, almost fatherly love, says, "Yes, you do." There's a pause, and
Hmm.
then you hear this amazing line, and so he says, "You have such perseverance, Bertie. You're the bravest man I know." And
Hmm.
right there, the king realizes that this man truly, truly is interested in him, and that's my what to watch for
Yeah.
moment. Is watch as this journey of the king from
Hmm.
complete self doubt to absolute self realization, because the king has a voice and he doesn't even believe it.
Hmm.
It's a great move from the
Yeah.
beginning, which is the beginning is horrifying. I mean, I just as a public speaker, as a pastor,
Hmm.
I cannot even begin to imagine what it must be like to have to speak and not be able to, and
Oh
then
no.
to see that transition
Yeah.
is a great move.
Yeah, every time he had to speak while he was like still learning, like me also, as a public speaker, I'm just like, my heart hurts for you because I'm rarely at a loss of words, and so like I just can't imagine trying to speak in words, like knowing in my head what I wanted to say and them not coming out. Before I go to my what to watch for, I just want to say you put that line in there. You have such perseverance, Birdie. You're the bravest man I know. My favorite part about that line is in that moment, he is like the best part of his father. Um, the last thing he says the last thing his father says, and he didn't say it to Birdie, he said it to somebody else.
Hmm.
Um, but the last thing his father said, um, which by the way, I think he was played. Never mind, I'll get that in a minute. Um, the last thing his father said was, "Birdie has more guts than all of his brothers combined." And the thing that Birdie says is he couldn't say it to my face. And so it's this brilliant moment on Logue's part where he becomes Birdie's new father almost.
Yep. Yeah, he embodies him.
And that gives him ultimately the confidence to move on and be able to do what he does. Um, my what to watch for is probably it's a little more superficial. Um, I like I
Just a
like
little bit.
I like actors and I like movies and I like watching things and going, "Oh, that's so and so from that movie." And I think there must be a rule. I was telling Victor this earlier. I think there must be a rule that when someone from a Harry Potter movie is cast in a movie, they have to cast other Harry Potter cast members. Because in this movie, not only do you have Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Bellatrix Lestrange in the Harry Potter movies, you have the guy who plays Winston Churchill is the guy who plays Peter Pettigrew in the Harry Potter movies, and I forgot this one. The guy who plays King George's father, Bertie's father, is
Yes.
Dumbledore.
Yeah.
The second one, not the first one, because he's dead.
Yeah. Not the
Um,
good one.
no, they're both good in their own right, but
No, they're not.
anyway, so
Second one's horrible.
Dumbledore the second. Um, but by the way, I mean, the first Dumbledore could not have done some of the things in the later Harry Potter movies. I mean, you don't cast a man who's a million in the first of a 7-movie stretch and expect him to live through it.
Hey, we're talking about the king.
Anyway,
Okay. We can
anyway,
talk about the merits of the Harry Potter movies later.
anyway, that's my thing is Harry Potter cast members. I really do think because it's not just this movie. Sweeney Todd does it, where there's like multiple Harry Potter cast members, and I think it's a thing. And so if you're like me and you like to watch a movie and be like, oh, that's so and so, and oh, that's so and so, this movie will not leave you wanting for that experience because you can do that, and you can be like me and tell all your friends, hey, look, there's so and so. Um, so that's my what to watch for.
Oh,
Besides all the stuff we already said, because it is a really really good movie.
yeah, I would, and it's on Netflix for those of you that have
Yes,
access to the Netflix. You can watch that on the Netflix.
the Netflix. What's wrong with you?
Hey, there's nothing else. There's the Netflix,
The
or you can watch
Netflix.
the Hulu. I mean,
Which,
whatever. The
all right,
Hulu.
all right. You're old.
I'll say it again if you like.
No. All right, folks. Well, this has been great. I enjoyed this. Again, watch this movie if you haven't. You can watch it on Netflix. And next time, I don't know if it's gonna be next week. Hopefully so. But what did we decide we were watching? Oh, Super 8. We're gonna be watching Super 8.
Great.
Um,
I've never seen it, so I hope it doesn't stink.
no, it doesn't stink. It's so good. And
All
so
right.
next time we'll be talking about Super 8, so you'll want to check that out. If you aren't already, you can follow us on Twitter. You can see that right up under our pictures over there. Also, you can like, favorite, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and let your friends know. This is a new show, so we're still testing the waters and trying to see what happens with it. But all the support and comments and criticism we can get from you guys is super helpful.
Yep.
So do that, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.